Usually early decision works very well for students who have really, really, really strict requirements on where they want to be and strong ties to that institution. Ask Dr. Gray Pre-Med Q&A brought to you by Blueprint MCAT. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. What can I help you with?
I am moving and I've been moving a lot in the past year. So I've lived in a lot of states and I'm just wondering which states I'm in state for. Um,
Yeah.
so I went to, I'm from Connecticut.
Okay.
And then I went to college in New York City.
Okay.
And then I moved back to Connecticut after college.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to move to Los Angeles.
Okay. When are you applying?
I'm applying this cycle, so this in June.
Yeah, so 5-ish months from now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you will probably technically be a Connecticut resident, though you won't be a Connecticut resident because you'll be living in California and you'll have to follow whatever the rules are for being a California resident. So the question is really simple to answer. It depends on the state. Each state has their own rules on what qualifies as residency for voting, for driver's license, etc. That's almost always the answer. Is just what does the state say in terms of what it takes to be a resident of that state? That's who you are. A lot of people try to just well, I'm going to move to Los Angeles and just not tell anyone. And therefore I'll still be a resident of Connecticut, right? It doesn't work that way because you're technically breaking the law, right? And so you just have to be careful. Now, there are some weird instances. Kentucky is one where I had a student move from Kentucky to Texas in the middle of an application cycle, and she called the schools in Kentucky based on me telling her to call. And they said, oh, your parents live here. You went to high school here. We'll consider you as in-state, even though you're not technically a resident anymore. So it really just depends on the school and more specifically and usually on the state residency requirements.
Basically, so if I'm planning on applying to California schools,
Yep.
Should I reach out to each and every one and see, which box I would fit into?
I don't think you need to reach out to each and every one. You can just call UCLA right off the bat and go, hey, I'm moving here in whenever. By the time I matriculate, I will have lived in the state for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Do your homework before you reach out to them so that you know, I know that California state says, the state of California says, I need to do X, Y, and Z to be considered a resident. Mm-hmm. If I apply to medical school this cycle, live in California for the year before I start medical school, will I be considered in-state? Oregon, for instance, OHSU, will consider, at least a couple years ago, I had another student reach out to them because she lived in California, wanted to go to Oregon, and they said, as long as you live in Oregon for a year to establish your residency, before starting medical school, we'll consider you as in-state. So there's just lots of nuances. Call UCLA. Very likely one school will be the blanket answer for every school. But if you have the time and you want to just ask, go ask. But do the research on what California says specifically, and then reach out to the schools.
Okay. So there's a little complicating factor.
There always is.
So I had to, my driver's license is expiring in 5 days because my birthday is in 5 days.
Okay.
And I had to renew because, I needed to get on the plane and I also need it for my job out there.
Yeah.
So, well,
that's not a complicating factor. You have an up-to-date license.
Oh, all right. I just thought that meant that I'm still a Connecticut resident, but I guess I'm a
Well,
Los
you
Angeles
are.
resident. Okay. Oh, okay.
You are right now.
Yes.
And then tomorrow, you won't be. Right?
Oh, okay.
So
True.
there are two different questions here at play. One, what does it take to be considered a resident of the state? Which again, go to California. They'll tell you like if you're working here, you moved here, within X number of days, you're gonna have to get a California driver's license. You're gonna have to do X, Y, and Z to establish residency in the state. That's on the
Mhm.
state level, right? That's voter ID, driver's license, etc. For medical school admissions, for residency determination, for if you are considered in-state versus out-of-state, for in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition, those rules are going to be typically set up by the state. But then you can ask the school to say, like, do I need to be in this state for 1 year prior to application, 1 year prior to matriculation? Like, what does that look like?
Okay.
So don't worry about like you need a valid driver's license. So it's fine that
Mm.
you re-upped that and you have a current driver's license. It stinks because basically it's wasted money because you re-up that and then you're just going to go to California and go sit in those horrendously long DMV lines and get a California driver's license.
Oh, geez. Okay. Sounds good. So is that basically the same advice as for like Connecticut? Am I still considered an in-state for Connecticut, or do I have to?
You're only
Yeah.
you're only a
Oh,
resident of one state.
yeah.
So very similar to what I was mentioning earlier with the student who moved from Kentucky to Texas. Let Connecticut know, or not let them
Mhm.
know, ask them. I grew up in Connecticut. That's all you really need to know. It doesn't matter that you went to school out of state. I grew up in Connecticut. I'm moving to Los Angeles. My family's still here, blah, blah, blah. Would you still consider me in state? I know there are some states that do that if family's still here, I went to high school here, etc. See what they say. On
All
your
right.
AMCAS application, you only have one state to choose,
Yeah.
and that will be California.
There were a couple people telling me just say you're in Connecticut, but
You
yeah,
can't.
I
They'll
just
check it.
don't. Yeah, exactly. So
I know University of Washington has a very robust like verification process of your residency status. So
yeah.
they don't play games. This is it really is a big deal because taxpayer money goes
Mhm.
to support the school, to support tuition. That's typically why out-of-state tuition is so much higher than in-state tuition is not because they're just charging an out-of-state tax to students. Typically the difference is paid for by the state. So if University of Connecticut charges $75,000 for in-state or out-of-state and $50,000 for in-state, right? 50 in-state, 75 out-of-state. The state is paying that $25,000 difference. It's not like the school is just getting an extra $25,000
Mhm.
for out-of-state students. So it's not a game to play.
Right on. Okay.
What happens
Uh,
if you get caught in that lie?
Sounds like a trick question. That's fraud, right?
Well, sure. But what is the medical school going to do?
Oh, they're just gonna reject me.
They're going to reject you, and worse, they're going to red flag you for everyone.
Oh my goodness.
And basically
Okay.
say, hey, stay away from this dude. He's a cheater. He's a liar. It's just
Whoa.
not a game that's worth playing.
I think, yeah, that's really the only question I had.
So
It was just really confusing.
I'm gonna expand. It's actually not confusing. It's just that students want to try to like I'm moving, but I really want to like be in state. So how can I make that work?
Yeah.
And you add confusion because you're trying to play a game. There are very simple rules when it comes to moving and residency determination and setup and all that stuff. Not super confusing. The question I have for you,
Hmm.
if you want to be considered a Connecticut resident, which there's only one state school in Connecticut, right? Unless I'm mistaken, and all of a sudden UConn has other schools that they've created, right? You have UConn, you have Yale, Quinnipiac. Is that it? 3 schools in the state?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. One of them is public. I don't know, even though the other 2 are private, I don't know what their state residency preference is. Some private schools still have residency preference. It's not always like every private school doesn't care. Some still do. So look at the MSAR for that. But the question is, if you're concerned about your residency status, why are you moving?
Essentially, I'm moving for love because my significant other lives
Darn it! The heart ruins everything.
in Los Angeles. So really, if like I made all the decisions in my life based on med school, I would probably still be living in Connecticut because UConn's a really good school and I like it.
Okay.
And yeah.
So if you end up getting into Quinnipiac, UConn, Yale, right? What's going to happen to that love when you have to go to medical school in Connecticut?
Well, we have been long distance. I was debating asking you this question, but we've been long distance for for the past 6 months. So we've had a trial run with it, and even pre-COVID, we were long distance for a little while. So I'm hoping to maintain it. The problem is, I don't think they would move because they work in the film industry in Los Angeles. So
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna ask, like, when is it a good idea to apply early decision? But I just don't think it's a good idea because you can only apply to that one school, right?
Yeah. So I highly recommend checking out my book, the Pre-Med Playbook Guide to the Medical School Application Process book. I have a chapter in there about early decision. And my general advice is that typically the risks far outweigh the benefits. Because you are putting all of your eggs in one basket, and because the school doesn't have to tell you anything until late September, if it's a no, then you go into the general application pool. You can add other schools. Hopefully you've already worked on your secondary essays for those other schools so you can turn them around quickly, but it's already so late in the application cycle. Usually early decision works very well for students who have really, really, really strict requirements on where they want to be and strong ties to that institution.
Yeah, I don't really have strong ties to UCLA. Just would very convenient to live there.
Yeah. So for you, you're going to have to look at if Hollywood is a strict requirement, which I worked with a student a couple years ago who had the same sort of requirement. Her husband, she was a non-traditional student. Her husband worked with the big cameras in the film industry. Like he made them or fixed them or whatever. He was some sort of bigwig with cameras in the film industry. And so he was very tied to that location as well. And she only applied to that circle of schools like Kaiser, UCLA, Keck, and then the DO schools in that area, Irvine as well. The DO schools in the area like Western, and other schools like Loma Linda, stuff like that. So take a map. We actually have a map of all the U.S. medical schools on our Medical School HQ website, and just look at that area and go, okay, if we lived here, what's your drive to work? What's my drive to medical school? How can we make that work? At the end of the day, when you are restricting yourself like that, it's hard, right? Getting into any medical school is hard. Getting into California medical schools is hard because there's just so many California residents who want to go to medical school. It's just hard. So do what works for you. Obviously, love is a terrible plague on humanity that makes us do crazy things. But if that's where life is leading you, make it work and have conversations and be open and communicate this whole time to say, okay, like, I'm going to do one application cycle and I'm going to apply to these 5 or 10 schools in this area. And if I don't get in, I'm going to have to expand my reach, and we're going to have some bigger talks on long distance, or can you change careers potentially to come with me? So communication, and hopefully it all works out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've talked plenty of times about like if I had to go to school in the East Coast, and you know, yeah, I mean, we're still talking through it, but like I don't think I'll limit myself to like a radius, because there are just some schools, especially on the East Coast, that I would really be interested in going to regardless.
So then the question would be, why are you moving? So
Love
I
for
know,
love.
but are there alternatives that won't force you to change your residency that will still allow you some flexibility to be out in California for a month? And then you come back to Connecticut for a couple weeks, you work a little bit, you do some shifts, you go back out to California for a few weeks, and then you come back. Like, are there some potential opportunities that will give you some flexibility that will allow you to see your significant other, but also allow you to keep your in-state residency in a state where it sounds like potentially you'd be happy at? Again, at the end of the day, there are lots of things that you can potentially do. Sometimes you just got to think outside the box.
True. And perhaps like I kind of have had a one track mindset with it, but I mean, there's just like extra baggage as well, because we have an apartment out there now, that we just got.
Yeah. That's okay. At least it's cheap.
Yeah, and I'm on the lease, and well, there's also, I mean, there are a lot of pluses to moving out to LA besides love. Like, there's this really cool job opportunity that I got there that I really want to try out. I think could be some awesome clinical experience.
Good. Go have fun.
Yeah,
As long as you're aware of the consequences, right? You go into it knowing that it is a risk. There are some drawbacks, but as long as you know that, that's all that matters.
So I will say, originally when I was about to move, I was supposed to actually move after I applied, because I was supposed to apply last year.
Okay.
But I decided not to apply last year, and this is why everything's a little lopsided. So
well. Good luck to you. Safe travels. Have a safe move. Is there anything else that I can answer for you?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
So you're applying this cycle. Have you taken the MCAT yet?
Yeah, I took it yesterday.
Nice. How'd it go?
I think it went well. I mean, I know everybody usually, of course, there are questions I didn't know, but I didn't feel like I'm not going to jinx it. It was fine.
Yeah. All right. UCLA material?
My full links were UCLA material, but nice. I don't know. Don't know how they translate to the real thing.
Fingers crossed. In your prep, did you use any Blueprint full length exams?
Hell yes. They're my first one.
Of course. And were they good? They felt realistic? Okay,
so Blueprint exams, they did feel realistic, yes, but they were very difficult.
Yeah. It's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah, exactly. I just, they're very difficult. I was very frustrated at first, but it got better.
You got better? You learned the way of the Jedi, and then you went and crushed it.
Yeah. Yep.
Good. Well, congrats.
Congrats
on getting that done. Congrats on finding love. Hopefully love doesn't ruin your chances of getting into medical school. And good luck with your application.
Thank you. Thank you so much.